big part of what we're doing for people is helping them step out of the victim mindset and let them be the own hero in their story. Not that getting a six-pack or benching 315 is the goal, but if you can help somebody realize that they have control over their health and the impact that can have on their quality of life, and then trickle down to their family members and potentially change their family tree, that's a pretty powerful why to keep doing this.
Yeah, it's never like, oh, you should see my biceps now. It's like, I can play with my kids. I have the energy for the whole day. It's things like that.
Yeah.
And that's really definitely what keeps us going.
Hello and welcome to the Optimal Agency Podcast. Together with you, we are exploring the ideas of agency, diving deep to discover a set of guidelines on how each of us can best operate in the day-to-day to maximize our personal autonomy, professional freedom, and ultimately our positive impact on the world. Thank you so much for tuning into the show this week. My name is Patrick Cummings. I'm joined as always by John Gilson. And we've got something new. We've got some friends on the show, the first of many of these conversations. I hope. We've got Jonathan and Blakely of Digital Barbell, which offers customized training and nutrition. Welcome. Hello. How the heck are you guys?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for the invite. We're awesome. Happy to be here today.
Where in the world are you? You're sitting in, is it an Airstream? First of all, I need to clarify. Okay, so you're sitting in an Airstream. Whatever is behind you looks beautiful. Where are you? Give us a little bit of context as where you're talking to us from.
We're about an hour and a half northwest of Austin, I think. I think that is Inks Lake behind us. We're at a small RV park. Yeah, we're in a little experimental phase, seeing what it would be like to live longer term in our Airstream. We do have a house outside of Austin too, but we thought it would be wise before we just jumped into a nomadic lifestyle to kind of see what it would be like. So we yesterday marked 2 weeks on this journey, and it's been interesting and eye-opening to say the least. So we'll see how much longer we stay out before we go home.
That reminds me, early on, I think it was maybe the first question we had. So you're not only the first guest, but I think you're the first listener question. You had sent in a question about like, hey, should we live in our RV full time? Or yes, we should do that.
I think the way I phrased it was great idea or greatest idea.
Yeah, that's right.
And we might answer that question ourselves for us soon enough.
Super cool. Okay, so we're going to get in a little bit more about obviously the life that you guys are living and the work that you're doing. We're going to talk about agency, about how Digital Barbell came to be. You guys are going to offer us some advice around a few of our health rules, which I'm excited about. Plus, of course, we're going to get into much, much more. But before we do, can you guys walk me through how did you get to Digital Barbell? I know, Blakely, you had a gym at some point. Jonathan, I'm not totally sure what you did before this. Can you just kind of give us the quick history that brings us up to present date as it relates to Digital Barbell and the work you guys are doing?
Yeah.
Blakely did a lot of cool things, and I just rode her coattails the entire way. That's the quick summary. No, I guess I'll try to keep this short, but we've been married 22 years, and within the first 6 months of being married, I was working a corporate job for Liberty Mutual, attempting to sell workers' comp insurance. And Blakely quickly saw how unhappy I was and said, hey, why don't you quit that job and just do something on your own? So discovered house flipping at that time, and through a lot of trial and error and ups and downs, like that became a full-time career for me for a long time. Was pretty successful at it, enough that Blakely came to work with me full-time doing that. A lot of twists and turns along the way until we discovered CrossFit back in 2009 when we lived in Tennessee for a stint. Kind of fell in love with that. Moved back to Texas where we were from, and eventually Blakely opened a CrossFit affiliate. She had been coaching for quite a ways before that, but opened an affiliate. I became more involved in, not necessarily coaching people at the gym, but we were kind of running a little home gym. Before that, we got involved in starting strength. Just, Blakely was diving into getting all the CrossFit certifications. And then we kind of had this idea to expand the reach of the CrossFit affiliate that she owned outside of the walls of the gym. And that's how the online thing started to be born, because people who were members of the gym wanted a way to help their friends and family, but they lived in other places. So I started getting more interested in nutrition and doing research on that and experimenting on myself and people who would let me experiment on them. And then, so Digital Barbell was actually born while she still owned the CrossFit affiliate. And
it was kind of tested through, like, a bunch of people would come over to our house and work out in our garage. And we we would do like a CrossFit Metcon, and then Jonathan was doing starting strength. So he would do his strength stuff, and people were kind of like, "Oh, what's he doing over there?" And then he actually got in back injury and started doing like more bodybuilding. And so like people who were coming over to our house would then do like, a little bit of strength work, some bodybuilding, and then it hit a CrossFit Metcon. And that's kind of like how we kind of came about this, like the programming style that we have. And we really got to see in person, like how it was working so well with these people, how they were enjoying it, their physiques were changing, and it was like sustainable. And they were like, huh, there's something here.
Yeah, that's kind of how our methodology was born.
Yeah.
Where did we transition from a gym with a brick and mortar to what seems now to be fully digital between the two of you?
Yeah, I owned a gym, and the guy who owned the building was going to like double my rent. And so I had to decide, was I going to continue there, move it to another place? And then at the same time, some friends of ours owned a house in Idaho, and they were like, hey, we know you're going with this, issue with your gym. Like we're not going to move into this house for like 2 years. If you guys want to go there, you can just watch our house for 2 years rent free. And we literally like never been into that part of the country. Looked on a map. I'm like, where's Idaho? And we were like, okay, we'll go. And we just packed up everything we owned and lived there.
Yeah. So,
and that's really was like, it was like late 2019. So perfect timing. We had already really established Digital Barbell. We were making tons of like demo videos in my gym, and we had all this like infrastructure, but we really weren't using it yet. And like when COVID hit, it was the perfect timing for this type of business, not knowingly.
Yeah, so we've been full-time with Digital Barbell since then.
Yeah.
Since late 2019.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, you stopped flipping houses at some point?
Yeah, actually that ended when we moved to Tennessee. I don't know if you remember what happened back in 2009, kind of like with the housing crisis and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But when we moved back to Houston, I went to work for a small custom home builder as a superintendent and did that.
Up until we moved to Idaho, he had to decide too. Like when we got to the decision to move to Idaho, I was working part-time at my job at Rice University. He was doing the superintendent job, and I was owning the gym. So we were like, are we going to really take this risk and like gamble everything and try this?
Basically the gym, it was covering all the expenses of the gym. Her job at Rice provided, a salary. She was only part-time there, and I was making over 6 figures as a construction superintendent. So why wouldn't we leave all that to go, full-time into a job that did not at the time make us enough money to cover our expenses. So that's what happened. That's what led us to where we are.
The interesting question isn't why wouldn't you? It's why would you? Clearly something overcame that financial security, and it was a desire for something. What was it?
Mm-hmm. And, we've done a lot of crazy things like this over the course of our marriage. And I think a lot of it comes down to our faith that God will provide for us no matter what the situation is, as long as we feel like we're acting in alignment with the direction we feel like we're supposed to be going, based on his leading. So a lot of it is faith, and a lot of it is, just the way that Blakely and I work together. Like we know that when we decide we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And we have a strong work ethic. And whatever we put that towards is going to be successful.
Well, I think to answer your question, though, I felt like we were doing way too much. I had a gym, I had a job at Rice, and we were starting to dabble into Digital Barbell. So I had basically 3 things going. And then he was helping me at the gym. He was doing some Digital Barbell, and he was working for his job.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like, this will be a way to have a solitary focus.
And it turns out when the world shuts down, you have a lot of time to focus on a lot of things.
And nobody, we were like, all right,
yeah,
we're working all the time.
Got it. Okay, cool. That was great. Thank you. So given that you, obviously guys, you work and live inside the world of fitness and health and nutrition, I wanted to ask you at least one question as it relates to a few of our rules. And for folks out there who don't know, we've got 6 rules of health. The first 2 I want to sort of focus on. Rule number 1, build cardio capacity and muscle strength. And rule number 2, eat unprocessed foods and cook your own meals. So with that as the context, I would love to know, given all of the number of people you two have worked with, what still surprises you as it relates to where people are stuck or confused or resistant, or no matter how many times it keeps popping up with a new client or an old client, suddenly what continues to surprise you about where people are struggling with their fitness, with their health, with their nutrition?
I think a big part of it is what you and EC talk about every single week on that podcast is our desire to try to overcomplicate things instead of lean into the simplicity and the results you can get from consistency with these simple things that work. And just how people really try to go about getting in shape without any kind of plan really behind it. Like, with rule number one, build cardiovascular capacity and muscular strength. The barrier to entry to building cardiovascular capacity seems really low. Just put on your running shoes and go out there, jump on a bike, go do it. But without a plan, like most people end up just exercising for a while instead of training. I think this is popping up a lot right now this time of year because a lot of people started this year with the goal of getting in shape. So they were like, all right, I'm going to start running 10 miles a week, going to start doing 5 Peloton classes a week. And because they're just exercising and didn't progress into building up to that, their neck is sore now. Their knees are starting to hurt. So I think helping people understand that, building cardiovascular strength has to be treated like training. You meet yourself where you are, you build it up over time, instead of just jumping in. I think that's a big thing that people do wrong when it comes to getting in shape. And then, building muscular strength, it's the basics, it's lifting weights, it's doing a little bit more over time. And I think one thing people get wrong with lifting weights is, having a routine that they follow. A lot of our clients that come to us, they'll be like, I'm frustrated. I've been working out for 6 months and nothing's happening. And we dig in and we find out, well, I'm doing 3 sets of 10 of this, this, and this every single week over and over again with the same weights. Yeah. There's no progression to it. And it's nowhere near the intensity that really drives people results. So educating our clients on the results that they can get from working closer to failure, I think is one of the most impactful things that helps them get more results than they've ever gotten on their own before.
Yeah. Is that concept of the difference between exercise and training based on progressive overload? Is that where the bridge is between, hey, I exercise and now I'm training? Or is it more nuanced than that?
I mean, at the root of it, that's basically it. And I think that's one of the beauties of delivering our clients workouts in the app that we do, is because it keeps track or it gives them a way to keep track of what they've done before, so that they can legitimately know that they're getting better over time using progressive overload. Coming from a group class background, we understand that so many people are just going in, doing the workout, going home, coming back, doing the workout, going home. And you're never really sure, am I doing more? Am I getting fitter? Am I getting stronger? So having a metric to see that you're making progress not only helps you get better results, but it feeds into the motivation cycle of wanting to continue going, because you are improving. And, I think you have a responsibility as a coach too, to point out to your clients like, hey, you did 2 more reps on your bench press at the same weight that you used last week. This week you're getting stronger. Yeah. You added 5 pounds to your squat. So yeah, I think helping people understand the difference between getting hot, sweaty, and tired and getting stronger and better is a huge part of our job.
How much do you think that it helps your clients that they're paying for your services versus going out on their own or even finding a free program?
That's a interesting question, because we kind of sent out a questionnaire to our clients at the end of last year that asked them, why do you work with us, basically? And none of them said specifically, I enjoy paying you the money, but a lot of them said having a plan to do is the game changer and the reason that I stick with this. I don't have to think about what I'm going to do. I just open the app. I see my workouts. I know when I hit complete, you're going to see my results. You're going to give me feedback. And, that's the reason that they continue doing it. I mean, every month we send out anniversary cards to clients, and, 3 years, 4 years, people stay with it for a long time. And I think a big part of that is just knowing that the plan is there no matter what they're paying for it.
It's similar to going to a in-person gym, someone is looking for you to show up. And it's similar to the way we coach our clients. They know that we're looking for them to quote, show up, even if it's online through the notification that so-and-so worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're closing that loop with some accountability, making sure that, and part of that accountability is on the credit card statement. And part of it is my coach is checking in on me.
Yeah.
What do you find to be the biggest barriers to progress for your clients? Is it, obviously it's consistency and all these things, but is it when they come in, is it that they don't understand what they should be doing? Is it they understand what they should be doing, but they don't know when and how? And is it figuring out, how do I find an hour a day, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days? Where are what have you found to be the biggest barriers in the way of people making the progress that that everybody says they want to make?
I think, maybe the expected answer would be like, people have trouble finding the time or things like that. And that is a legitimate issue. But, after coaching a lot of people, I can tell you the biggest problem with people getting results is avoiding the all or nothing mentality and perfectionist mindset, to where, not giving them self permission to do something when they can't do everything. That is the number one thing that stops people from making progress. I'm not going to have time to do my entire workout today, so I'm not going to do any of it. They don't have a salad on the menu, so I'm going to do the all you can eat chicken wings. That is the number one barrier to making progress.
Are you following me?
It truly is it. I mean, if we can help people conquer the all or nothing mentality, and they're willing to put in the work and follow the program, the potential is unlimited. So that's a big part of coaching, really, is helping people get over those perfectionist tendencies that have been holding them back. It's number one thing for sure.
Where do you think that mentality comes from, or why, what is the source of that all or nothing, perfect or not at all? Where does that come from? Because you're right. Whether we're talking about health or fitness or business or personal relationship, if we can't get it right the first time, we're just like, I'm not even going to try. I'm going to wait until I'm ready before I begin. Where does that come from in your mind, in the conversations that I'm sure you've had trying to unwind this mentality?
Well, that's why I listen to the Optimal Agency podcast. I'm hoping you guys will one week just chime in and tell us what the root of that is, so we have an easier way to fix it. I don't know. It's just, I think it's part of human nature. We have a desire to have black and white rules. We want to know pass, fail. We are uncomfortable with, the gray area a lot of times. And, that's, I don't know. It depends on the person. There could be something in their past that has pushed them that way. It really could vary. I think that's the beauty of coaching, really, is figuring out what's driving it in that person to help them, figure out what's a compromise we can make instead of all in or all out.
Yeah. And where does nutrition for your clients, where does what they eat play into this, right? Because I need to know what to do. I need to know when to do it. And of course, not only in the gym, obviously you don't just hand out the starting strength program and call it a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of individualized nutrition coaching, is like, knowing what the basics that everybody needs are, the right amount of food, the right kinds of foods, and trying to figure out how to customize that into goals that are habit-based around the circumstances of somebody's life. So to answer your question, it's a huge part of it. And I would say probably, about half of our clients do nutrition coaching. Also, we offer them both services a la carte. So not everybody does nutrition coaching, but, and actually I'll throw this out there too. This is something we've kind of changed our approach on over the years, is when somebody's interested in doing training and nutrition, we look at how much, time, energy, and money they have to devote to making all these changes in their life. And if they're not really ready to focus on both things, we'll hold off on recommending doing nutrition coaching and just focus on the training initially. So we're changing less variables at the beginning. And we've found that it really gets the ball rolling with people. They start to feel a little bit better. They automatically want to start making more positive nutrition choices, because they're going to wake up more energized to do their workouts. They're going to have better performance. And then we start talking about, all right, now that the fitness on the training side is kind of on cruise control, let's start making the changes to your nutrition. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but it's really about finding a more sustainable habit-based approach than just giving somebody a macro prescription and saying, like, let's play the food Tetris game. That, we started with, giving people macronutrient prescriptions right off the bat, and now we may never even get to that. We have clients who have lost 50, 60, 70 pounds without ever tracking macros, and I feel like that's a big win when it comes to helping somebody with their nutrition.
Yeah, let's boil that down. I mean, if I'm going to lose decent amounts of weight or change my body composition without ever tracking anything. What gets me there? What's the advice?
We have to have something to track. So we either have to see a visual food diary eventually of what you're eating, a written food diary. There has to be some way to know what's going on. Otherwise, we don't know what variables to change. And a lot of it is just digging into the things that we know are holding you back and trying to find substitute behaviors for those things. So if we know that you cope with stress through cookies and alcohol, we try to find a more positive outlet for that. And what that does is, it automatically addresses energy balance by going to the root of the situation versus just knowing we're going to attack energy balance by saying eat 1,800 calories per day. It's just a roundabout way of controlling quality and quantity without just necessarily typing it into an app or putting the food on a food scale.
That was your bread and butter. We're going to go into other areas of optimal agency that perhaps you consider yourselves less expert in, but that I'm still really curious about. And those specifically, we talk about health, we talk about wealth, and we talk about time. So I'd love to talk about time and time freedom a little bit with you. How do you think about time? The two of you are running this thing. You obviously have come from a place where you're sort of used to doing a lot of things at once. How have you worked together and individually to own your time in such a way that you feel like you're not overwhelmed all of the time? Because I imagine in the business you're in, the two of you could easily be morning to night, packed, stuff to do all the time. And yet you're sitting in an RV in a beautiful spot and like you've figured out how to do this. So talk to us a little bit about what you've done well, perhaps what you've struggled with, perhaps some of the things you are still struggling with as it relates to owning your calendar, owning your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I think no matter what business you're in, if you own your own business, it's very easy for it to consume every thought during your working hours and your non-working hours, especially in the age where, continual content creation is like, for some reason now the king of productivity and business growth and making yourself feel important. So yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it's an ongoing struggle. It's something we've gotten better at over time. Back when we started Digital Barbell and it was, the pandemic and there was really no excuse not to work all the time because there was nothing else to do. But I think we got to the point where we're probably getting close to burnout, just like working 7 days a week, who knows how many hours per day. Some of that changed when we hired another coach back in 2021, I think. So that allowed us to kind of like offload a little bit of the actual coaching responsibilities and grow the business without us being the technician and doing that work. And just restructuring some of the ways that we do things. Like, Blakely writes all the programming for Digital Barbell, and then each of us as coaches customize it and apply it to our individual clients. And that used to be something we did on the weekend for some reason. Like we would all enter our custom training clients workouts on Saturday and Sunday, and that basically
it's a huge job. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of like got smart about it, and we then have them trained our coach to, just creating these like barriers of like, I need to get the programming written by Monday or Tuesday so the coaches have access to it so that they can enter it like by Thursday, Friday, and it's done for that week. So just having little things like, I don't know why it took so long to think about that, but having these little structures in place to like organize our time has really given us more time.
And I think something I know you've talked about on the podcast before too, guys, is what is it, Parkinson's law, where whatever time you give yourself for a task, you're going to end up taking that long for. I mean,
exactly.
We have 100% found that to be true. So, as somebody who is easily distracted myself, like I really have to be careful to give myself a timeline for when I'm going to get this done. And that really does make a difference for me. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we've, together we've done like the home remodeling. We were photographers for a stint, and then this together. And like, we still to this day, I mean, until like 2 weeks ago when we came out on this RV, like we will fill up our entire like 8 to 5 work day by sitting in front of our computer if we allow ourselves that. And like, we're just really trying with even this experiment to be like, okay, let's like work until 11. Let's go for like a walk somewhere, like, into a state park or something, enjoy nature, and then let's come back to work. We're really trying to like not just like let ourselves sit in front of the computer because we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How does it make you
So,
feel to
yeah.
get out of there and go walk in the state park in the middle of the day? Like what's the overall feeling?
Half guilty that we have that ability, I think. And I think that has been a big part of it for me. And then half appreciative. So I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
one of those is more interesting than the other. Like, what are you guilty about? What's
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what we're learning is that having the agency to have the flexibility that we have, it puts forth like a little bit of stress because you're now faced with more decision about like, well, what am I going to do with the agency that I've created?
Yeah.
We've been really good over the last 22 years at, being available to help anyone with whatever they need. It takes the pressure off of us to have to decide what we're going to do. I know this is something you guys have talked about before. And so I feel like having agency also creates stress unless you have a structure to follow, or you put some guidelines around how are you going to handle this agency that you have.
When when I worked for Rice and when he worked in construction, people didn't ask us to like, hey, can you take me to the airport on Tuesday at 10 a.m. because they knew that we were
Right.
going to be at our jobs. But now it's like not a question. It's like, hey, you can do that, right? Like,
Or people ask us like,
you're not working.
what are you doing today? We're like, well, we're working. What are you doing today?
yeah. Yeah. There's that paradox of, I have so much freedom, I need to put boundaries around it. And, one of the concepts that we've discussed is the idea that you get agency so you can widen out your option sets. But when you have agency, your next job is to narrow them to a different focus onto something that might make you happy. And I love that you guys are out prototyping what might make you happy because you've found out some really valuable things through that prototype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess back to your original question too, Patrick, is I think like one of the things that's made it, better for us to easier use our time, and flex our agency over it is kind of knowing the times when we do the best at certain tasks. Like I know that I'm the most creative in the morning. So that's when I do our email marketing. I know that I can, really focus in on watching my clients check-in videos after I have lunch before I work out. So I'll do that then. I think like both of us, we found our groove at when we're the most productive at things. So it fits our schedule and we do the best job at it too.
So you touched on a little bit with the walks, one of our rules of time, which is to preserve unstructured time. One of our other rules that I'd love to get your thoughts on or how your experience of is rule number 5, set boundaries and eliminate interruptions. And I ask that knowing what it's sort of like to sort of be in charge of everything and be open to every interruption and how easy it is to say, oh, Sally sent me an email. I have to respond to that right away, even though it's right after lunch and my job actually right now is to watch these videos, right? How have the two of you figured out how to, as best you can, set boundaries and eliminate interruptions so that you can actually make the progress you're trying to make?
I mean, I struggle with this big time. So I probably wouldn't be the one to give anybody any advice how to fix this problem. I mean, the simple stuff works, don't bring your phone to your desk if you're trying to focus on a task, but it's hard to do in this notification culture, especially in a business where, I think one of the reasons we get so many referrals and we have so many clients is because we do a good job. And sometimes that means, kind of being there when it's not necessarily the most convenient for you and your agency. So it's hard to find that balance of doing a great job, but also leaving unstructured time. And it's definitely something that I struggle with even to this day, for sure.
Yeah, I think like what I was talking about before with the programming, like I will like put time limits for myself. Like I have to get this done by Tuesday, and I will just like phone away, head down, and like write the week or 2 weeks of programming and like not look up until I'm done. Same thing with my like client programming. I will just like, we often will like go to a coffee shop or something if we need to have like uninterrupted time, because for some reason that really helps us like focus in a little bit more. There's not like something like, oh, let me change the laundry over, or just something silly that you might just get up and randomly do. So we'll like plant ourselves in a coffee shop for 3 to 4 hours on like a Thursday or Friday morning, and I'll just like head down, get my programming in for the clients and then like come up for air when we're done with that. And that to me, where it really works to manage my time into like these blocks.
And I think like it's not really unstructured time, but we have certain non-negotiables that we know make us the best version of ourselves. We train 5 days a week. It's been harder on the road for sure, but that's just a non-negotiable for us. It's structured time, but it's not the work that we do.
Yeah. I realize like what a blessing it is to have control of your time. I think one of the like changing points in my mind when I was working like full time at Rice before dabbling into gyms and all that stuff was like there was like y'all remember that Hurricane Katrina that hit New Orleans, and it was a big, like shortly after that, within like 3 weeks or so of that, a hurricane was like bearing down on Houston where we lived at the time, and it was like a Category 5, and it was just like they were like, this is going to be worse. And it was super stressful for the city. Everybody, of course, was like figuring out how to be safe. And I remember like waiting at my desk at Rice, like, are they going to let us leave or not? And like, I just was like, what am I doing? Why am I putting like my safety, I'm waiting for someone else to make this decision for me. What can I go take care of my house and then leave the city? And I remembered at that moment was just like the turning point of like, I want to have more control of my time and, my decisions.
Yeah.
One of the things I think it can be hard to remember, in choosing your own path, and especially as it relates to work, is that the work, we do it not so that we can work all the time. We do the work so that it allows for fill in the blank. In your case, it might be, we do this kind of work in this way so that every once in a while we can go on the road for 2 weeks in the RV and bring the dogs and go, explore. How often do you think about that? How often do you need to remind yourself, oh, the point here isn't so that I can work 12 hours a day. The point is so that I can do this kind of work with these kinds of people. And that allows fill in the blank. Is that hard to remember?
Yeah. All the time, man. Honestly, and it makes it even more challenging because we like our work. It's easy to work. We have a long list of projects that we want to work on, and it's easy to fill up your time and move through the checklist of things. But it's harder for us to take a step back and be like, okay, let's enjoy some of the agency, the time freedom that we've created. It kind of goes back to what Blakely said about feeling a little bit guilty. And I don't want this to come across as like we don't work, like we're enjoying so much free time, we feel guilty all the time. It's just hard to draw the boundaries sometime and take a step back and be like, all right, let's enjoy some of the flexibility that we've created. It's an ongoing struggle. And, we actually didn't buy a camper until 2 years ago. We didn't know anything about camping, never wanted to buy a camper, none of that. So, buying that first camper that we bought really kind of forced us into creating some of this time for ourselves and justifying the cost of buying it, and even more so with buying this camper.
Yeah.
So it's kind of pushing us in that direction that you're talking about.
Yeah. When I owned the gym, like I loved owning an in-person gym. I would do it again, but it really was it absorbed all of my time because you have to be there for every class, and I was the only coach and I was like the only person that ran it. So, I was almost kind of like starting to become resentful because it was taking all of my time. It gave me, I did something I loved, but I had no time. And even when I would like get to hang out with friends and family, I was just like, I was exhausted and I had nothing to talk about but the gym. I was just like, there's nothing else I do except for run this gym.
Yeah.
So
owning a CrossFit affiliate is the opposite of having agency.
Unless it's something you love.
Well, one of the things I've run into, and I'd love your take on this, is whenever I love something, I have this knee-jerk need to monetize it. I'm like, oh, I love this. This would make great business. And then as soon as money starts flowing in on it, all of a sudden I don't love it quite as much as I did. Has that happened to you? Have you felt that? Am I weird? I mean, maybe not.
I don't think you're weird.
Maybe not related.
We have a lot of friends that have done like a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, I have one friend in mind in particular who's probably started a dozen businesses, none of which exist now, over the last 20 years.
But personally for me, like honestly, like I would have run that CrossFit gym forever if I had the capacity and time, and it didn't make any money.
It was a nonprofit.
And it was just to me personally, I don't think about like if something makes me money or not. I'm like, does this give me enjoyment? Do I like doing this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like,
Yeah,
and
Blakely she does not like make decisions based on how much money is this going to make us at all. Like,
or how much money is it going to cost me? It's just like, do I want to do
Yeah.
this or do I not want to do this?
mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's a good place to be. We balance each other out well. Not that I'm like money hungry or anything, but sometimes it's refreshing just to be like, she's like, I don't care if it's, not going to make us any money or it's going to cost us money. It's what we want to do. Let's do it.
This is a good bridge into our third category of wealth. I would love to get into this a little bit. How do you, and it sounds like you just sort of bridged into the question I was going to ask, which is, given that you're doing this together, obviously you're doing everything together. How have you found the discussions around money, around wealth, around the choices around those two decisions, whether it's to buy a house or buy an RV or bring on a coach, because that obviously is probably at the beginning a financial hit until all those things. How do you navigate that relatively complex world such that you are in you do end up in a place of understanding and you're moving in the same direction at the same time?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just luck that we both have similar attitudes towards spending and saving. Like neither one of us is an extreme spender. It would be terrible if like I was frugal and she would just love to buy stuff. So we have that going for us that doesn't create like an automatic conflict. And I think we were lucky earlier in our marriage to, well, first of all, not come into the marriage with a lot of debt. We didn't have we both went to very conservative, cost colleges. Nobody went to Yale or anything like that here. So we didn't have like a lot of student debt coming into the marriage, just some small amounts of consumer debt. And we made a decision at the beginning of our marriage pretty soon to get out of debt completely. Hashtag Dave Ramsey. So I think that helped out a lot. And then we were fortunate that the house flipping business was a very profitable business and it gave us, we had a good income.
That probably gave us the biggest lesson in like managing money, and that probably we were able to carry it on throughout, is because you had to we would live 6 months at a time. Like, okay, if we sell this house, we have 6 months of income. We've got to in the next few months, get another house,
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a constant spreadsheet
Yeah.
of how long can we live on this? And I think that's really helped us.
Yeah, it was
even having businesses like this. When we moved to Idaho, we're like, okay, we're selling a house, we have this long to live, and and if we don't make it, we turn around and we come back.
Yeah, we're both very realistic. We Blakely does our accounting and bookkeeping, and then we communicate about it regularly too.
Mm-hmm.
I know what our revenue was last month. I know what our expenses were last month, even though she's the one running the numbers. So having open communication about that stuff, I think, is critical, both on the personal and the business side. You can't be the person who just sticks your head in the sand and just ignores the fact that you're overspending and not saving anything. I think
actually happened when we moved to Tennessee briefly. We moved up there to help take care of my grandfather, and we had 13 months of or we had a year and a half.
We sold our house in Houston and basically had so
much money to live on, and that was when the housing market went down, and so we decided we'll become photographers, and that was and we actually ran out of money, and I had worked for Rice at that time for 8 years, and I came crawling back. I was like, do you guys would you guys take me back? And they did, and so we just turned around after 13 months of living in Tennessee, and we couldn't find jobs anywhere up there. It was just a disaster, and then came back, and we're like, I got my job back, and he ended up working for somebody. So it's happened before where we kind of tried something and ran out of money. So that's made us, it's helped us.
We try to keep a good awareness of what's going in and what's going out, and then also we're not afraid to admit too that we need some help going from having some W-2 income or a lot of W-2 income to having zero. All of a sudden, the automatic savings that happens when you work for somebody else goes away, and you're no longer contributing to retirement. And then finding ourselves oh shoot, we don't have a plan for this, we don't really know what to do. So we hired a professional to help us figure that out. I think having the humility to be all right, we need to pay somebody to help us come up with a plan to follow this on the wealth side of things, was a good step for us. So going back to just knowing what you need help with.
Man, I love the resiliency in what you're talking about. The kind of, hey, we rock bottomed out. like at least our bank account did, you know. And I'd love, you know, to understand how did your motivation and your love for each other and your love for your family and your love for what you're doing stay positive when you were hitting bottom like that? And, you know, how did you overcome the fear that comes along with that?
Like I said before, a lot of it comes down to our faith in God, and that even if we have nothing, we can still be happy and have peace. So our happiness and our day-to-day fulfillment isn't reliant on what we have at the end of the day. And then just looking back at the past as proof that we can overcome challenges. Like the way that, you know, you learn to do anything hard is by doing something hard and getting through it, and then using that as proof to yourself that when the next time something hard comes up, go ahead and face it, because you've already proven that you have what it takes to get through it. And I'm not ignorant to the fact that we are extremely blessed that we work well together. Like there's a lot of couples out there, or even you probably have a friend that you went on a road trip with, and by the end of it, you wanted to kill each other and you didn't want to talk to each other for a week.
Yeah, that's Patrick.
And I think there's yeah. So like, we're very lucky that we can drive across the country or spend all day in the car together. And like, of course we get in arguments and there's things we don't agree on and we have fights, but you know, more often than not, we can spend a lot of time together without wanting to kill each other.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in like, and our clients hate this, but I'm like, if you just do burpees every day, like life will be easier, because I just really do believe like doing something hard regularly, like something like CrossFit hard regularly, helps you become mentally stronger for different challenges. And even like is 2 days ago, we almost went home from this trip, and I was like, I really just want to see it through. Like, you know, we're kind of in the dip right now, and we just like kind of got it. If we go home in the dip, we'll probably never pull this trailer out of storage again, you know. And we gotta like come out of the dip before we go home. Otherwise, you know, to like learn what we're supposed to be learning something here, I think, you know. And I'm like, we gotta figure out what we're supposed to be learning from this before we turn around.
I love that. So many of the questions that we get from listeners of the Optimal Agency podcast boil down to, how do I make a hard choice in pursuit of what I want? And, you know, it sounds like you've made a lot of hard choices. How do you think about them? How do you confront them? And obviously your faith is an element of that. Your history together is an element of that. Your history of resilience is part of that, but that never makes tomorrow's hard choice easy. You know, how do you start dealing with those choices?
I think you gotta have a bigger risk. You know, it sounds kind of cheesy, but you have to have a why. Like there has to be a bigger reason that you want to do something other than just like, well, what am I going to get out of this at the moment? You need to develop the skill of kind of future casting. What are the small choices that I'm making right now? How are they going to impact what I want to get in the long run? And, you know, this is something I talk about with clients a lot, is when you do run into situations where you're not sure what to do, or there's challenges, or you're afraid or whatever, go ahead and feel the emotion of being scared and wanting to take the easy choice. Feel that. But then instead of looking for an excuse not to do the thing, flip your brain around into problem solving mode and look for a way that you can do the thing, even if it's not a full 100% version of the thing, instead of looking for an excuse not to do the thing. And that just, you know, fuels the self efficacy of you being able to do hard things. And you're going to get the result that you want if you can just take these small positive steps. And then that result gives you the motivation, which fuels the ability to make these decisions easier in the long run, or the next time that you're faced with it.
And it goes back to what we had talked about at the beginning of this conversation, or close to the beginning, which is this sort of the all or nothing. If it's not perfect, I can't do it. So much of what I'm hearing from you guys is, yeah, we had a sense of what we were trying to accomplish, but we didn't know all of the things, but we still took step one, and step one led to step two. And here we are some number of years later. Is that something that you feel like is a skill that you develop, that ability to say, okay, we don't have all the answers, but let's go try 2 weeks. Right? Let's go buy whatever it might be. Is that a skill that you've developed? Is that a characteristic that one or both of you just sort of brought to this, and you just kind of was just fully baked? Because The challenge, I think, and the uniqueness of the two of you is you both have to have that same mentality, at least enough so that one isn't pulling while the other's trying to push. One isn't being resistant while the other one's getting excited about something. And so where does that come from?
I guess I can answer it by telling two little quick stories. When I had that job at Liberty Mutual back in 2002, right after we got married, and I was super unhappy, coming home unhappy every day. I had a car that I wasn't using. It was like a collector car. Don't get too excited. It was a 1986 Oldsmobile, but it was worth a 442 if you know anything about Oldsmobiles. All right. It was worth about $5,000. So we had the idea together with Blakely's push, really, of telling me to do this, because I never would have. Who like quits their job 6 months after getting married, talk about a winner of a husband. But she had the idea to do this. So, together we decided, let's sell this $5,000 car and we'll use that money to cover my income until I could get the ball rolling with flipping houses. Now we burned through all that money before I made a penny. Didn't work out. But the point is, like, we came up with a plan together and we supported each other through it. So I don't know if that's a skill or not, but, being the other person's cheerleader and ultimately wanting their happiness, I think, is a huge part of, how we've been able to grow to where we are now, both personally and to grow this as a business together. I already forgot what the second. The other story was, growing up, my bedroom was a complete disaster. Socks all over the floor, clothes all over the floor. I never put anything back where it came from. Always looking for my car keys and my wallet, that kind of thing. I don't live like that anymore. After 22 years of being married, I've learned there's a better way. And it actually is a better way. There's a whole lot less stress when you know where your clothes are and you have clean underwear to wear, and you're not trying to leave out the door and try to figure out where your keys are. So I will say that there is a way that you can, acquire these skills through practice. I don't know if that example has anything to do with what the question was, but the point is, you can change if you put your mind to it. How's that for like an Oprah Winfrey quote?
I'm just happy to know, Jonathan, that you've got clean underwear.
I didn't say that, but the potential.
He knows where it is, Pat. He's not saying he's wearing it.
Okay, last question, so we can wrap up and you guys can get back to your life there, which is, we have this, here at Optimal Agency, as you know, we have got this sort of pseudo algorithm that we are making the case for, that we are arguing for, in that when you increase your health, when you increase your wealth relative to your needs, when you increase your time freedom, what that allows for is agency. But agency isn't the point. The point is the impact we can have as a result of that agency. And so I'd love to know from both of you, what is the impact you're trying to have with Digital Barbell, with your life, with all of the things that we talk through? Why has it been, what are you aiming for if you had to really zoom out? Why has all of these challenges, all of these decision points, why have you made them, and what are you trying to get yourself toward?
For me, that's easy. I kind of had this at my gym, and I kind of carried it over to here. My dad died when I was really little, and his gravestone says he touched so many and they were better for it. And I've always kind of used that as my mission of why I like to do things like this, and why I like to help people. And even nowadays, it's people I don't even actually know, in person. It's
your
internet, online clients, but having this little touch into these many people's lives, and hopefully making it a little better as you go along.
I think, you guys familiar with Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand? I think I didn't really realize it until I read that book, but a big part of what we're doing for people is helping them step out of the victim mindset and let them be the own hero in their story. Not that, getting a 6-pack or benching 315 is the goal, but if you can help somebody realize that they have control over their health and the impact that can have on their quality of life, and then trickle down to their family members and potentially change their family tree, that's a pretty powerful why to keep doing this. And, when we hear the stories from our clients that are realizing that, and just the wins that they have and the impact it's having on their friends and family and stuff, that just makes it worth it. every day. And so much more powerful than
Yeah.
a progress picture. you
Yeah,
know?
it's never like, oh, you should see my biceps now. It's like I can play with my kids. I have the energy for the whole day. It's things like that.
Yeah.
And that's really definitely what keeps us going.
Yeah. Makes it worth it.
All right, my friends, we're gonna John and I are gonna hang on the line here for a second. We want to talk about a couple of things that we are thinking about coming out of that conversation with Jonathan and Blakely. Real quick though, if you haven't yet, jump into the HWT questionnaire. Figure out where you are across these major ingredients of agency that we talk about here, often health, wealth, and time. You can get to it at optimalagency.co/HWT. Take you 5-10 minutes, series of 60 questions across all three of those ingredients. It will spit out a score, and more importantly, it will spit out some recommendations from us based on where you are weakest to help you improve as you move toward agency. Okay, my man, that was fun. Jonathan, Blakely are good people, good vibes. What do you think coming out of that conversation? I've got a couple things, but what popped out at you perhaps first or more strongly?
Yeah, well, there's two things that popped out. One is the buy-in from people who are focused on really strength and conditioning on what constitutes a virtuous spiral in someone's life. In other words, you don't get fit because of the six-pack or the biceps. You do it because it teaches you to do hard things, and you do it because it makes you better at other hard things, right? The point of hard exercise isn't to get fit, although it is in the first order. There's a second order benefit, and I love that idea that you can do hard things. And the other thing that Jonathan said that I couldn't agree with just more wholeheartedly is I'm teaching people not to be a victim, which is the negative statement of I'm teaching people that they are in control of their own life. That's what I'm teaching you. And I love that because I think it's exactly what we're trying to do here too, is to say the world is clay. You have your hands on the steering wheel, pull the levers, take the risk, avoid the fear, do the thing even when you're not sure and take the first step. So yeah, I wanted to jump through the camera and hug them when they got after that.
That's really interesting because the first thing that pop up when you say that is like, there's this resistance, culturally about talking about victimization and victim mindset. Like there's a real resistance to like hearing what that actually means. And perhaps it's more valuable, not perhaps, but it is more valuable to not say, okay, this is the victim mentality and we're trying to fight against that, but this is the pro agency mindset. And that's what we're moving towards. Right. And that to me is more people are open to that than they are open to the idea that perhaps I'm existing inside of the victim mentality or the victim mindset. So I like that as a reframe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important because trauma exists for everybody. And it exists for everybody on an individual level, and it exists for some people on a systemic level, and fine. And the answer is always, now what? Right? Don't trip on things that are behind you. So what are you going to do now? And, I love that for them. And I really enjoy it.
And a couple examples just from Jonathan and Blakely's story, which is like, don't have a job. Okay, now what? Let's sell this car. That'll at least get us 2 months, right? Whatever it might be. Or, this gym is going to double my rent. Okay, they could have spent months fighting and ultimately losing, and maybe, but okay.
Or getting a job they didn't want.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Yep. Or saying, hey, I was doing a job I didn't want. I took this risk. Oh my God, I'm scared. Let me run back to the safe thing. And I love that Blakely actually did go back to the safe thing. She went back to an employer and said, take me back. But she didn't stay there because she knew there was more out there. There was another mission. There was something else to do.
Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway, and then we talked about it a little bit, but I think the thing that is most impressive to me, and I think perhaps because I imagine it's also part of the more challenging element or aspect of what they're doing, is just they're doing it together. It's not like I have this vision and I'm going towards this, but it's what is our vision and how will we navigate the decisions, the myriad decisions necessary to move in that direction together. So it's the challenge of, compromise is too weak a word for it, I think, but it's the challenge of dual decisions in a similar direction. And how do you do that? Because that's really challenging. It's hard to, especially in this pursuit of agency, it's hard to bring your definition of agency or your definition of wealth or your definition of time freedom or whatever in line with somebody else's, such that you're never resistant to the other, that what you're aiming for, your definition of agency or your pursuit of wealth, isn't at odds with mine. And suddenly we've got this perpetual tug of war. To me, that's the most one of the more impressive things about Blakely and John. Like, they just feel like, again, whether it's they did it on purpose or whether it's just because they're just synced up, they seem to have figured out a way to do that really well.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's hard.
I think there's an answer that's obvious to me, which is take the time at the outset of any relationship, committed relationship, whether romantic, whether business, whether friendship, and say, do we share values? You know, people, we know each other for 3 years and now we're comfortable enough to have a value conversation. Like, hey, guess what's here's my divorce lawyer's number, right? I think that you need to have those conversations up front. But I think another unique things happens when couples, especially romantic couples or partners are simpatico, is that you move past dove-eyed love at some point and just the animal lust, and you move into we're partners. And it's so much more important at that phase. Not am I attracted to you? Not do I like what you're about? It's do I share values? Can we actually go do hard things together? And the answer has to be yes. And obviously for Jonathan and Blakely, their faith has something to do with that. Their shared history of overcoming challenges had something to do with that. But you can tell at the exact same time that if we put the two of them on, you know, American Ninja Warrior and said, get to the other side of this course, they'd figure it out together. And I think that's pretty cool.
I mean, thank you. Thank you everybody out there for listening. Thank you again to Jonathan and Blakely. Check out Digital Barbell. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. Jonathan, you're not John.
I am.
John.
I am.
John and
Don't tell
Jonathan
anybody.
and I won't be back. John and I will be back next week for a new episode of the Optimal Agency Podcast.